Gentlemen, a pleasant good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Luda Sports Network. It is your boy Lewis coming back at you once again with another heavy hitter banger with yet another video. Make sure to smash that like button, hit that subscribe. Make sure your notifications are turned on. Make sure you guys are sharing this on your social media platforms and comment down below in the comment section. Truly appreciate that. Happy Halloween, everybody. Hope everybody is enjoying their time. Hope everybody is also being safe out there. On to this video. I had to talk about this and debunk this myth, and we need to stop with this narrative. Go talk about the 2014-2015 Atlanta Hawks. When we talk about this roster, yes, they won 60 games. They had a pretty magical season. They finished number one in the Eastern Conference with the most wins that year with 60. And check this out: who was the coach of the year? Well, he currently coaches the Milwaukee Bucks. His name is by the name of Mike Budenholzer. Also, by the way, he also got to run operations because he also won Executive of the Year. Now, looking at the Atlanta Hawks, they were 10th in scoring at a 102.5 points per game. They were 5th in opponents' points at allowing 97 a game. So the pace was still a little bit kind of slow at that time. 4th in the league in simple rating system. And they were 15th in pace at 93.9. They were 6th in offensive rating and 6th in defensive rating. They were expected to win 56 games, right? So this would tell you that they were a juggernaut, according to most people, right? But let's look at their roster. They had Pero Antic, Kent Bazemore, Elton Brand, Damari Carroll, Austin Day, Al Horford, John Jenkins, Kyle Korver, Shelvin Mack, Paul Millsap, Mike Muscala, Adrian Payne, Dennis Schroeder, Mike Scott, Thabo Sefolosha, and Jeff Teague. Let's click on Jeff Teague for a second. You know, since this Atlanta Hawks team is a juggernaut. All right, taking a look at Jeff Teague. He was a one-time All-Star, and that was in that 2014-2015 season. He's played 11 years in the NBA. Career 43% from the field. He averaged 10.9 points. Actually, no, 44.5% of his career average. Three-point shooter, 35% decent. 36 this past season. He only played 59 games. Okay, now let's look into his per game. Let's see. Let's go to 2014-2015. Okay, that season he averaged 15 points and 7 assists. Solid season. 34% from the three-point line, 46 from the field. But let's be really honest with ourselves. Jeff Teague is a very inconsistent basketball player, and he's a guy who you can mentally take out of the game when things don't go right. So as good of a season as he had, and he played 73 games that year, he's only made the All-Star team once, and it was in that 2015 season. But he's not a superstar. Good, solid NBA player, and especially that season, but not a superstar. An all-star, yes, but not a super. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna go to Al Horford. Al Horford, good, solid player. He's made 5 all-star teams, and he was also an all-star on that 2015 Atlanta Hawks team. If we go to his per game stats, he averaged 15 points and 7 rebounds in the 2014-2015 season. He was 28 years old. He shot 53% from the field, 30 from the three-point line, and he was a 75% free throw shooter. 15 and 7. Those are solid numbers, but in most years in the NBA, those are not all-star worthy, personally. But being that as it may, and don't get me wrong, I like Al Horford, okay? So this is no disrespect to him. But let me see, who else made the All-Star team? Oh, Kyle Korver. Let's see. Kyle Korver, who is mostly known as a shooter. Let's see. He made 1 All-Star team. His per game stats for the 2014-2015 season. Let me just move this a little bit over. Here we go, 2014-2015. He averaged 12.1 points per game, which was a career high for him. But you have to ask yourself, he also shot 49% from the three-point line, which led the NBA that year. And he shot 48% from the field. Now you would say to yourself, that sounds great. But let's remember something. What is Kyle Korver's primary game? He is a guy who comes off the screens and shoots the basketball. So listen, as great of a three-point shooter, all-time great three-point shooter Kyle Korver was, and he's currently in the league right now with the Milwaukee Bucks, Kyle Korver's not a guy who takes over the game, and if he does, he would just have to get hot from three. But he is a specialist. That's what is Kyle Korver known for. So when we put this into proper context, he's an all-star that got it because he was playing solid on an Atlanta Hawks team that won 60 games. He's the third all-star that I mentioned with Al Horford and Jeff Teague. Go to the last all-star on this team, and that would be Paul Millsap, who played for the Utah Jazz with Jerry Sloan. Paul Millsap, solid NBA player as well. He's on the Denver Nuggets right now. Right now he's 35 years old, and he's not really, I think his time is starting to really dwindle now. He's not as what he once was. He is older now. Let's go to that 2014-2015 season with the Atlanta Hawks. 73 games, 47% from the field, shot 75 from the line. He averaged 16 points, and he averaged 7.8 rebounds. He averaged 7.8 rebounds. And again, Paul Millsap, good player, no disrespect to him, but and he's made multiple all-star appearances, but again, it's like those guys are not superstar players. So now we go to funny. Oh wow, take a look at this. Kenny Atkinson was one of the assistant coaches on that team, and he ended up coaching the Brooklyn Nets this past season. Right? So all of those guys averaged double figures. They had 6 guys that averaged double figures, and yes, they shared the ball. Dennis Schroeder averaged 10 off the bench. The entire starting lineup averaged, that much. They also had Damari Carroll. All of these guys played 70-plus games in the starting lineup, but let's face it, are you screaming superstar on that team? Does that team sound like a juggernaut to you? No. Were the Atlanta Hawks championship contenders entering that season? The answer is no. So they took everybody by surprise with that 60-win season. And give them credit, they played well. And I'm pretty sure the media was hyping them up when they went into the playoffs. But if we use eye test and use context, this is not a championship team. And the reason being is because they don't have a superstar, ladies and gentlemen. So those numbers, they look great. They look awesome. But so when we look at them, guys, and yeah, they were expected to win 56 wins, maybe because of the roster. I'm not really sure. But, these are all, when they come with numbers. And listen, Atlanta played really well that year. They were a pretty good team. You would consider them great just because of the season they had. But you have to ask yourself, were they really a championship team that season? And it's no. And then if you look at their playoff results, they barely beat a Brooklyn Nets team that was far weaker than what they were, and it took them 6 games to beat the Brooklyn Nets. Then in the next round, they lost in a 6-game series to the Washington Wizards. And hypothetically, you could say that the Washington Wizards, to me, were better than the Atlanta Hawks in terms of the way they played in that series. Atlanta barely escaped that. So give them credit. They got to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in team history. So I give them credit for that. But here's the thing, guys. They were the first 60-win team to get swept in a conference final in NBA history. They were the first 60. Actually, no, they were not the first 60-win team. Sorry. Actually, no. The other 60-win team that got swept in the conference final were the Orlando Magic. But the Orlando Magic were not the number 1 seed, though. They're the first number 1 seed that won 60 games to get swept in the Eastern Conference Finals in NBA history. As the number 1 seed. The only other team that was the number 1 seed and got swept in the conference finals were the Detroit Pistons of 2003, and they were the number 1 seed and they only won 50 games, and those were 10 less wins than what the Atlanta Hawks got in 2015. And then they got swept by the Cavaliers 4-0. And let's remind ourselves, people. I know the Hawks were starting to get injured a little bit too, but even if we put it into proper context, they weren't going to win that series. Number 1. Number 2, they got swept with a team that did not have Kevin Love on the roster after he injured his shoulder against the Boston Celtics in the first round. And that was with Kyrie Irving playing 2 out of the 4 games in those Eastern Conference Finals. And when we look on paper, who was going to stop LeBron James? LeBron is a superstar. Also, people forget that they traded for Timofey Mozgov, Iman Shumpert, and J.R. Smith. Now, when you compare the Cleveland Cavaliers roster of 2015 to the Atlanta Hawks, who's going to win? if you were seriously playing a game of pickup basketball. Are you choosing a Jeff Teague, a Al Horford, and a Kyle Korver, Damari Carroll, any three you want on the Atlanta Hawks over a Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving, and a LeBron James? And the answer is no. The answer is no. So those 60-win Hawks that went to the Eastern Conference Finals, they finished with a playoff record of 8-8. So they didn't look dominant at all, in those playoffs. So that's why when I say things like, oh, LeBron beat, the 60-win Hawks that have 4 All-Stars, that's why I said when you use the eye test, this is not a dominant team. They had a great regular season. All due respect to them, but I just knew they weren't going to win the title, especially once you put them, again, they had no superstar to go up against LeBron James. And you just knew that wasn't going to work. They were in a 4-game sweep. So these regular season numbers, they all look great until you see the eye test into the playoffs. And playoff-wise, they struggled against the Brooklyn Nets, they struggled against the Washington Wizards, and then they got swept by the Cleveland Cavaliers. So that roster, even though the system got them to win 60 games, you need a superstar in the playoffs. And then if you look at their regular season stats, first of all, in order to be a champion, you got to be a good rebounding team. They were 28th in rebounding. They were 30th in offensive rebounding, and they were 22nd in defensive rebounding. They were 5th in steals. They were 2nd in assists. But they also didn't get to the free throw line a lot. They were 5th in percentage, but they were 24th in free throw attempts, and they were 19th in makes. So they don't make a lot of free throws, and they don't get to the line a lot. So that's something to mention. So they were good. They were a good mid-range shooting team. They were 4th in the league. So sometimes when you do shoot the ball well from the field, it will take away from the rebounds. So that in part is true. So I can understand that. They were 7th in threes attempted and 5th in makes. So they were a good 3-point shooting team. But also, they were 10th in field goals made, but they were 27th in attempts. So they don't get up a lot of shots. But that could also be due to the fact that if you're making baskets at a high clip, that's going to help your percentage. And they were 4th in the league in field goal percentage. But also, you got to be a good rebounding team. And they were middle of the pack in shot blocking. Also, they were middle of the pack when it came to turnovers. So they don't necessarily take care of the ball like that great. And they also led the league in personal fouls. So that's what's so deceiving about when you look at teams like this when they have such a great season. And that's why you can say to yourself, and that's why I said that I knew that they weren't gonna win. They don't have a superstar. If the matchups favored the Hawks all 3 rounds, they would have went to the NBA Finals. But I said against the Cavaliers, it was just a bad matchup going up against LeBron and Kyrie and them. So just not a good thing. But that's why I could say, can we stop this narrative about how you beat a team with 4 All-Stars? You got to look at the context. When you break down these players and you break down this team, this was not a serious contender, even though it's going to go in the record books as a team that you beat. So, like I said, they're solid NBA players. Much respect to them for being in the league. They played well that season. I give them credit. But again, you need a superstar to win in this league. When in the playoffs, a guy who could go get baskets, a guy who could go against a LeBron James, and they did not have that. So their team was not championship. They were not structured to win a championship, as the way they were constructed. But that's my take on the 2015 Atlanta Hawks. Just wanted to eliminate that narrative. So ladies and gentlemen, this is another one. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Bless up, live, laugh, love. Thank you guys for watching.